Now, in case you're wondering, I had the brilliant idea to go to Mongolia in the dead of winter. So it's -20 this morning as we drive off to the new Ulaanbaatar Airport, which is nicknamed the Chinggis Khan International Airport, where we're hopping on board the flag carrier of Mongolia. This is MIAT Mongolian Airlines. We'll be traveling in their 767-300 in the business class cabin today on their longest route out to Frankfurt, Germany. Now, MIAT has actually started to refresh their fleet, adding some MAX 8s to their fleet to reach other places in Asia. However, the 767 still has somewhat of an outdated cabin feel, although the airport is brand new and the experience is somewhat refreshed, so I was very excited to try this out, especially for a country that's not exactly known for their aviation. I figured it would be a completely new experience. Now, the Chinggis Khan International Airport is actually about an hour outside of the city, which is surprising considering the old airport was only a half hour away from the city. So they decided to move even further from the city. Not quite sure why, but if you know, let me know down in the comments. But anyway, it's pretty much brand new. It opened in mid-2021, and so it's still got that new airport smell to it. So I was really excited to see what it had to offer, especially in terms of a business class lounge, since I had heard from my airline that I did have access to that prior to my flight. Now, according to the person in my hotel, Mongolia doesn't get much tourists, and most of the people traveling in and out of this airport are Mongolian, hence a lot of the shops and restaurants are Mongolian. In addition to that, the two main airlines are Aero Mongolia and MIAT Mongolian Airlines. There are a couple flights from outside airlines like Turkish and Korean Air, but you're not going to find those hanging out here too often. Now, there are things around the airport like this statue here, for example. They were donated from Japan, considering that the Japanese actually funded a good portion of this airport, hence the reason there are actually quite a few flights that go to Tokyo now. One thing that they did make sure to add was a business lounge. You can see the sign for it here. The way it works here actually is you go check in for your specific business class lane, and it basically funnels you directly into the lounge, actually pre-security, but it's still a separate business class wing of the airport. You can also pay to access the lounge if you are traveling in a different cabin as well. So the check-in lanes are broken down by flight, unless you're traveling in business class, and then you can go around the side of it to go loop around to the business class check-in area, which is a little bit separate. It's got a nice business class carpet to lead you up to the counter, and it has a specific agent dedicated just for you, as well as that doorway on the left, which takes you directly into the business class lounge, which we are going to go check out in a bit. Now, the lounge here is a contract lounge. It's not owned by any aircraft in particular, but you can see here that Korean Air does use it, MIAT uses it, as well as there is paid access for passengers who want to access it before their flight anyway. But before you even head through security, all you do is check your bags. You come in here to scan your boarding pass and head into the lounge. Now, interestingly enough, they actually take your passport and boarding pass, which was a little uncomfortable, but while you're hanging out in the lounge, they do your passport check, they give you your immigration stamp, and so when you are ready to head off to security, you're already cleared through immigration and you just have to pass through your normal TSA style checkpoint. Now, the lounge actually was decorated pretty well in my opinion. They really stuck to their Mongolian roots with a lot of the decorations, but I thought the colors they used and the decor they used was actually pretty great. The food options were also pretty great. They had plenty of dessert options and snack options, but they also had a section off to the side where they had specifically meal options with salads and sandwiches and stuff like that. And actually, the chicken sandwich I had was pretty tasty. As far as the beverages go, it was a self-serve style. They had fridges with soft drinks in it, as well as fridges with alcohol in it if you're trying to make your own mixed drink. They also had plenty of hot beverage choices like coffee and tea and whatever you were fancying along that line. And in addition to that, they had juice. Of course, they had the two normal juice options, blueberry and sea buckthorn, of course. I ended up getting a chicken Caesar salad, which was mostly salad, not a lot of chicken, but I also got a chicken sandwich to go with it that was super tasty, and I got a coffee that unfortunately was mostly milk. And I grabbed myself a seat off to the side. Luckily the lounge was only about half full at its busiest, so there was plenty of spaces to sit, but you can see a look at the little decor here in my corner. The nice thing is they do have charging outlets, and plenty of them at every seat, including universal charging ports and USB charging ports. So if you don't have that international adapter, which you should if you're traveling internationally, but maybe you forgot it, it's not the end of the world if you're here. Now the nice thing is, scattered throughout the lounge are multiple TVs, and there are remotes in front of each of the TVs. So wherever you sit, you will have a view of a TV, and you are well within your right to go see what's on. Unfortunately, it's mostly Mongolian TV, and I was only able to find a couple American things on, mostly just news. Now I was about ready to head back over to my flight, so I went over to reception to grab my passport and boarding pass. She'd informed me that she had already handed them off to immigration and that she no longer had them. So, rather than getting my boarding pass from her, I had to walk through the lounge to the back side where they have a private entrance to security and just trust that my boarding pass was there. On the way there, we passed by these private rooms. They have 3 of these, so if you're looking for more private of a space, especially if you're traveling with a group, it's got a closed door, it's got table and chairs, and it also has its own TV if that's what you're looking for. Now I got through the back of the lounge here. You can see this private entrance that goes all the way to security from the lounge, and it was a normal TSA type security. And then after that there was an agent who was holding my passport and boarding pass. My passport already stamped for departure, and so all I had to do was be escorted through these doors and out into the terminal. Now the terminal here at the new Genghis Khan International Airport has 6 gates, so it's not huge, but they really only have 1 or 2 flights operating at a time here. And in addition to that, there are some restaurants and shops scattered throughout. I actually thought the shops had a great selection. Gate 3 was going to be our gate today to Frankfurt. It looked like some of the gates maybe weren't set up to hold heavy jets, so a lot of them were set up for the A319s or 737s or even regional jet size airplanes. But here's our 767-300 that's going to be taking us to Frankfurt shortly. The nice thing about this airport is that pretty much everything's normally priced. Usually stuff at airports is way overpriced just because it's at the airport and it's taxed super heavily. But if you're just looking for something to eat, or maybe you're going to one of the shops, you'll find things at a pretty normal price as to what you'd find them outside the airport, which is nice considering they do have actually plenty of shops with fun Mongolian stuff, whether you're looking for some Mongolian style clothing or just some Mongolian souvenirs. They've got slightly different souvenirs than you'll find on average at most airports, so it was kind of fun walking through those shops and seeing what my different choices were to bring home. Boarding was only separated by business class and economy class. Here you can see the economy class line since there's no groups or anything like that. Unfortunately, they just called for boarding and there was nobody in the business class line yet, so I didn't know that they were boarding yet, so I had to rush up to the business class line and just kind of weasel my way in. But it was kind of fun considering that I was the only business class passenger boarding at this time, so I kind of had the cabin to myself for about 5 minutes until the other passengers showed up. Now the business class cabin here is set up in the rare 212 configuration. I was on the right side of the aircraft where I had a window seat, and luckily the seat next to me ended up being open, so I also had access to the aisle seat, so I could check that out. But the interesting seats here are, of course, the middle seats. The middle seats where it's just one standalone seat, an aisle on both sides, no privacy partitions or anything, so you're kind of just out there with not a lot of privacy. And Noel Phillips actually had a good video testing those out, so if you're curious, go check out that video. Now another thing I noticed is that legroom was never really an issue, but you'll notice here that row 1 has almost double the amount of legroom that my seat has. It's just that because of that, you're kind of exposed to the galley, and so you can kind of make your decision as you will. Keep in mind that I really didn't have any legroom issues in my normal seat in row 2. Now the ad for the bank on top is somewhat interesting, and of course the fake leather got a little bit sticky as the flight went on, but the design of the seat I actually thought was pretty cool, and the seat itself was super comfortable. Before departure, the flight attendant came around with some pre-departure beverages. Of course I got to go with my pre-flight champagne. Here you can see the MIAT branded boarding pass here, which was somewhat normal, no special decorations, but the coolest part about it is, considering that I was a business class traveler and there wasn't that many, the first time ever I was sequence number 1. And while everyone else boarded, we were passed out a amenity kit, a headset, and a blanket to go along with the pillow that was already at our seat. Speaking of the seat, let's take a look at just kind of what the seat has to offer. First off, to the left, they have reading lights right here above your shoulder, and between that there is a privacy partition that can pull out. Unfortunately, it really doesn't pull out that far. I thought it was stuck, but that's really just as far out as it goes. But I assume if you are reclined, it does block the person next to you at least. Below that, there is kind of a little cubby area, and in there you're going to find a Seatback TV remote along with a USB power outlet. The remote can be pulled out and stretched out for all the functions for your TV, in addition to having a keyboard on the back that I never used. And in front of that is your headset jack, which has a 3-prong plug, even though the headset they give you is only 2-prong. Above that's where you're going to find your seat controls. I do always love when you can adjust each piece individually, so I was happily playing with that in flight to get perfectly relaxed. In addition, there's plenty of places to set your drink. You can see the center console, in addition to the wings that pull out, and there's also another tray that can pull out in the front side of that. So if you have plenty of beverages, there's plenty of spaces for those beverages. And below that, you're going to find the normal universal power outlet as well to keep your devices charged. Now going to the front of the seat. In front of you, you do have a few cubbies there, and I was able to store a little bit of stuff there, but I didn't use it a whole lot considering it's so far away from me. In front of me though, there is a Seatback TV, although the position of it is a little bit low, although that doesn't exactly come across in the video, but when you're reclined it works out just fine. The Seatback pocket in front of you, they were all kind of a little bit loose, but there was some literature in there to look through, and although it said no stowage under your seat here, they had no problem with me storing my backpack there. To my right side is where you're going to find the tray table, which can pull out of the armrest. And in addition to that tray table, there's also a button there that will allow you to move that armrest up or down to adjust the height of your tray table while you're eating, which is a feature that I don't see on many airplanes, but I did definitely appreciate. Now, an old airplane is an old airplane is an old airplane, as they say, right? So the bathroom's just a small white box, unfortunately. You all know my opinions on the small white box style lavatories, but when an airplane's this old, it's just somewhat normal to not have extra lighting or decorations within the bathroom. I was impressed by the fact that they had a safety video, but in the meantime, I was just staring out the window the entire time on taxi out, considering that I've never been to Mongolia, and these giant mountains with plenty of snow on them were the perfect backdrop to this beautiful takeoff and departure out of Ulaanbaatar. And actually, a quick side note on that, I heard Ulaanbaatar pronounced in probably 5 different ways while I was here on my short trip. If you know the correct way to pronounce it, please tell me, because I'm tired of mispronouncing this city, considering that every way I pronounced it, I seem to get some funny looks. Now, if you are sitting on the right side of the aircraft on departure, you get a nice view of the town of Ulaanbaatar. It's down settled in that valley there. You can kind of see it through this slight bit of haze. But it is one of the only major cities in the country of Mongolia, and for a short stay it was plenty for what I needed. And then came the in-flight entertainment options, which I was assuming there wouldn't be too much, considering that they don't serve any English-speaking destinations. Germany's about as close as you get to that, so I was assuming there'd be a few, because there always is, but I figured the greater portion of the selection would be in other languages. Now, interestingly enough, the Seatback TV is not touchscreen, so you actually do have to use the Seatback TV remote to click everything, but once I got that configured, I was in and I could check out everything it had to offer. Now, they do have a few different options, movies and TV shows of course, along with some music, the moving map, and the games. Now, one thing it does have here is USB connectivity, and I wasn't able to get this to work, but if you do connect your USB device, it looked almost as if you could connect images or maybe even some music from that, but I wasn't quite able to figure that out. In addition, the About Us tab has different information about the country and company if you're somewhat familiar with that. And in addition to that, they do actually have a pretty good choice of games, and I regret not actually playing any of them because there were actually quite a few choices. Now after that, I did pull up the moving map, which isn't interactive, but it does scroll through all the different options, and it's plenty for figuring out where you are. Then I was checking out the music. One of the categories I checked out was Top Pop. I think what they mean is Top Pop of 2010, because it was all pretty old songs. Good songs, but old songs. But after that, I decided I'd check out some of the entertainment options. So first off was TV. I always watch the comedies usually, so I decided to go check out what comedies they have. And these were all single episodes, so there was 4 episodes of comedy TV shows. There were other categories as well that had a little bit more choices. This is a drama category, for example. But some of it is in another language, and so you're not going to have too much in English to watch there. But I did check out the movies next. For example, the comedies here, you can see much more English options, just nothing that's exactly a Hollywood classic by any means. I did end up watching a couple of movies, and then after that I decided to actually use my personal device to watch some stuff that I had downloaded before the flight as well. But after that, I wanted to take a look at the amenity kit that they had passed out. And before I check that out, you can see here on my tray table how that armrest raising and lowering goes. So if you are trying to eat your meal and you're trying to adjust the height of that, you can. The amenity kit actually was one of the better amenity kits I've ever received. For example, I had La Octane hand cream and lip balm, which is a super nice brand if you're unfamiliar with that. In addition to that, they had a nice bottle of mouthwash and a hair comb, along with a normal eye mask, toothbrush, and toothpaste. But it also came with a nice pair of slippers, which I was more than happy to put on once we got in the air. And then the Seatback Literature. There was a few different things in here that I took out and looked through. Obviously, they have the safety card and the vomit bag, but they also have a nice thing here explaining basically corruption and avoiding corruption, and if you do notice any corruption, to report it to this line. So that was interesting. I had never seen that before. They also had a thing on how to connect to their Wi-Fi, along with a couple in-flight magazines. Now, when I flew on Aero Mongolia, the magazines were all in Mongolian, so I was a little wary about actually being able to read these. One of them was in Mongolian, but this one actually was in multiple different languages, so there's plenty in here that was in English as well, which was nice because it explained all the different stuff to do in Ulaanbaatar, whether it's food, whether it's lodging, whether it's activities, stuff like that. But when in doubt, I can always go to the back and keep myself busy on the information about the airline. For example, here's the information about their destinations and their fleet. For example, you can see all their 737s and the lone 767, which is what we were traveling on today. In addition to that, I was enjoying taking a look at their entire service map. You can see it's mostly throughout Asia, except for their one flight to Frankfurt, which is what we're on board right now. I also decided to use that placard in the seatback pocket to figure out the in-flight Wi-Fi, which I was able to connect to, although it didn't look like it was actually Wi-Fi. It was just more entertainment on your personal device. The good thing, however, is that it did seem to have much better and newer choices than was on the seatback TV. I'm curious if the Maxes that are newer airplanes actually have these selections on the seatback TVs, and it's only because the plane that we're on is a little bit older, but there was more stuff to look at there. In addition to that, there was also a spot to put in your seat number, and it said that it would give you stuff specifically about your seat, but I wasn't actually able to figure out what it gave me different from anyone else. And now the seat controls. Now the bummer is, you can adjust everything individually. The only problem is, it moves the entire seat in order to make room to move the piece you're looking for. So if you're just trying to slide the seat back, it's also going to have to move the leg rest to make room for that. In addition to that leg rest, you can actually fold that down to rest your feet on it. And if you've watched my Avianca video, you know how I feel about this seat style, because the footrest is a somewhat hard plastic. And so sure, you can rest your feet on it and somewhat get comfortable, but after a long time of resting your feet on the hard plastic, it does start to kind of make your feet hurt, even with some shoes on. Now here I am in the relax preset mode, which is basically where I sat the entire flight. I ended up raising the leg rest up a little bit more where I was comfortable, but this was plenty to keep me occupied for my 9th flight in a comfortable state. In addition to that though, they do have a lie flat mode, but I say lie flat loosely considering it doesn't lie completely flat. The seat is flat, but it's not at a 180-degree angle, it is at a slight angle. So here you can see the seat next to me I got in the full lie flat position, and you can see here, while you are able to lay flat, it is at a somewhat of an incline, which is kind of normal for those older seats. But after playing around with the seat for a little bit too long, the flight attendants came around with nice warm towels and got us ready for our first meal service. I'll also add that I always love these tray tables here that can rotate in and out, so if you are trying to get out of your seat while you have a tray full of food, you are able to do that. Now I took the flight attendant's recommendation here with the Golden Gobi Mongolian beer, and personally I thought it was absolutely amazing. As I enjoyed my beer, I noticed that we were crossing over the border into Russia, which, due to the current state of things and being an American, I'm not sure when or if I'll ever be able to actually go to Russia, and so I just had to enjoy the view from up here as probably one of the best that I'll have. Beef or chicken was our choice for the first meal, and while presentation isn't exactly there, the food itself was actually not bad. You can see here it comes with a side plate that had some nice thing with some fish roe and some cheese and basically a little charcuterie board for you there. The main course had beef and noodles. The noodles were actually pretty good, and the sauce of the beef was also pretty good. They also came around with the choice of breads in a basket. I ended up going with one, and she decided I needed a second one as well, apparently. Also came with a little piece of cheese and the yogurt as well. What I do like is the silverware. I thought the little gold ring on it with the MIAT logo was a nice touch on that silverware. And yes, this slowed down, but I was having so much trouble cutting through the meat. That was the only problem with this dish. But after I finished my entree, they came around with dessert, which was a nice piece of cheesecake, and they offered coffee or tea. I ended up going with a nice cup of coffee. I do like these MIAT branded silverware and platingware. It was kind of fun on these flights seeing how long it takes people to close their window, as I got cozy with the blanket they passed out, which actually was super soft and I really enjoyed. I looked around and noticed that some people had begun closing their window shades as they finished eating, and some people still had them open, but little by little, they all got shut until the cabin was completely dark, and the majority of people ended up getting some sleep. I didn't quite feel like sleeping at the moment, so I decided to take a walk into the economy cabin where things seemed to be kind of messy back there. There was everywhere. There was people sleeping across seats, there was people standing up and walking around, and everyone in the aisle and everything. It was kind of a mess. But I decided to use the restroom in the back of the cabin, and then I made my way back up, and it seemed like meal service had wrapped up as more people were in their seats. There was no more flight attendants in the aisle, but you can see a little bit more of that economy layout in the 232 setup. Now, it wasn't too long before I ran out of English TV show and movies that I really wanted to watch, so after a while, I decided to take out my laptop and watch some stuff that I had downloaded on that. Fortunately, because there is in-seat power, I was able to keep it fully charged throughout the entire flight, and I had plenty of stuff to watch to pass the time on there. Then shortly after that, they came around with more hot towels, which made me think that some meal service was coming, which was somewhat interesting considering we were still about 3 to 4 hours from landing. So I guess they were serving the meal a little bit earlier than usual, but I do have to say I was kind of a fan of not eating right before landing and instead having a couple hours to digest fully and everything before we actually landed and had to get off the airplane. But I decided to go with another glass of champagne as I prepared for this meal instead of beer this time. And with that, they came around with our options for this one, which were pork or fish. I decided to go with the pork in this choice, which came with another little charcuterie board plate, a nice plate of bread, and of course the main entree. Now, since I got coffee with my last dessert, I decided I'd get tea this time. They gave me a nice green tea that I made with this. And in addition to that, they passed out the dessert shortly after, which was nice. It had a nice little matcha macaron and 2 little pieces of chocolate, which was good. It wasn't long after that before we finally started our descent into Frankfurt, where basically it was cloudy from just east of Moscow all the way in, so I wasn't able to get any good views of anything, and actually Frankfurt itself also had a pretty low cloud layer. with that, welcome to Frankfurt, Germany. We have successfully completed MIAT's longest flight in the route network from Ulaanbaatar out to Frankfurt on the 767-300 in the business class cabin. I hope you enjoyed it, but let me know down in the comments your thoughts on MIAT's business class cabin. I am curious if they're going to upgrade it. Now, Mongolia is obviously not known very much for their aviation, and so I don't think they have too many plans to become the latest and greatest airline, but with 767s becoming somewhat outdated and less fuel efficient, I am curious at what point they'll decide to make the step into the future like they have with their 737s into the MAX program. But as far as my thoughts on the airline, this was more of an experience for me. Obviously, it's not going to be anywhere close to the leading business classes that you're going to find in the world, but just because Mongolian Airlines are not really well known and it's kind of in a part of the world that I've never been to, it was just more of an interesting thing that I wanted to try out, whereas I wasn't expecting it to be the most luxurious. That being said, I definitely enjoyed the new airport that Ulaanbaatar has, and definitely the business class lounge I thought was great, and the food options that they had were pretty good there as well. Now, the seat does lack privacy and it doesn't lie completely flat, so it's a little bit outdated, but granted, kind of like I mentioned before, that was kind of the standard. I didn't have the highest of expectations. The seat itself was actually super comfortable, and so I was able to relax the entire time. The only part that became uncomfortable was the footrest, which is the same as my Avianca video, considering it's basically the same seat, even though it is on an Airbus. Well, I would definitely go back to Mongolia. Not sure if I'd fly MIAT again, but especially if they introduce a new long-haul aircraft, I think I'd definitely enjoy trying that out. Maybe their 737 MAX 8s as well, just with a little bit of their newer product to see what they have in the updated services. But for now, at least, we're in Frankfurt, Germany, which has definitely mixed opinions with the airport itself. Some people hate it, but you can't doubt that it's at least a convenient place to transfer. They have great connections around the world, but it has been dubbed the Newark of Europe at times, just because it's overcrowded, it has delays due to weather or the overcrowdedness, and if you're unfamiliar with it, a lot of people can find it somewhat confusing. In addition to that, it actually took us over an hour to get our checked bags. From the time we got off the airplane to the time I had my bag in hand was almost an hour and a half, which was absolutely insane. We stood at baggage claim for a little over an hour after getting through immigration alone. Finally, though, we did get our bag and we headed back out to the curb here at Frankfurt. But I'm curious, let me know down in the comments below, what are your thoughts on MIAT? Would you travel on MIAT Mongolian Airlines? Would you do it maybe business or economy class? But let me know your thoughts, and as for now, safe travels, and I'll see you guys next time.